6 to 9 months from now, the stock has a 3 in front of it. I think it's back to above 300.
Wait till you see what's going to happen when all of a sudden they start selling cars instead of for $40,000 a piece, for $25,000 a piece, which is going to happen in about a year and a half from their new model. The new model, they think, is going to do 5 million cars a year. 5 million cars a year for the Model 2. That's coming.
I say it is definitely a bombshell to say that Tesla will start producing the $25,000 vehicle in about 1 year. And Ron Barron still stands by his position that Tesla will reach a market cap of $4 trillion, which would mean a Tesla stock price of $1,277 in 2030. But about the $25,000 car, James doesn't seem to be optimistic. Unless they are building a secret factory somewhere and installing production equipment right now, this is impossible, he says. But from Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk, we know that Tesla will first build their next generation vehicle at Giga, Texas, and that Elon was working on the production line during the summer. So Sawyer says that a timeline of 1 to 1.5 years is very possible actually for production to start. This year's Tesla sales in the US with October sales have surpassed the sales of the whole last year. And Gary calls the US sales in October strong for Tesla. I can't say I would go that far, but certainly the sales are now weak. Compared to Q1 of this year, yeah, the sales are pretty strong so far. This is good news. You know how pretty much every company in the US made a deal with Tesla to access Tesla's supercharging network? Well, now we are seeing something like this also happening in China. A joint venture between GM and a Chinese company, SAIC, has announced that it will be partnering with Tesla for supercharger network access by the end of this year, which will make it the first Chinese company to do so.
Well, I mean, the really wild thing about the end-to-end training is that it learns to read, it can read science, but we never taught it to read. We never taught it what a car was, or what a person was, or a cyclist. It learned what all those things are, what all the objects are on the road, from video, just from watching video, just like humans. I mean, humans are photons in, controls out. Like the vast majority of information reaching our brain is from our eyes. And you say, well, what's the output? The output is our motor signals to our sort of fingers and mouth in order to communicate. Photons in, controls out. The same is true of the car.
Because it was able to learn all of that just by itself without being taught, the possibilities are limitless for the bot later. And what's also really amazing is that Elon said the car will be able to drive better than a human even with hardware 3 and 100 watts of power, and if we really optimize, it can probably be less than 50 watts. Now that's Elon talking about FSD, so no timeline on this, but it's pretty crazy to think about how little energy is really needed for what he thinks is required to solve full self-driving. I reported earlier that Tesla was getting ready to enter the market of Chile, and now we are hearing more about it. Tesla clearly is very serious about entering this market, and it's just a matter of time before this happens now. It also has huge lithium reserves. What do you see here? I see Tesla vehicles in Sweden not being imported through ports because these ports are on strike. Because Tesla is not giving into the unions in Sweden because, you know, the union members actually did not want to strike against Tesla, even though they were ordered by the union to strike against Tesla. We refused anyway. But now the ports joined the strike, and these people in ports are actually serious. Tesla cannot import vehicles through some of these ports, at least for some of them. And Tesla is now importing these vehicles through a land border. I assume these vehicles are coming from Norway to Sweden. If you were following the story carefully, I said that Tesla could do this, and now they are actually doing it. So the strike doesn't really have much of an effect on Tesla. Whoa, the Tesla Cybertruck was spotted climbing stairs off-road, showing great ground clearance. And it's not just the ground clearance. I mean, the whole thing looks pretty impressive, but also a bit scary at the same time when the car goes up and sort of goes back like that. Yeah, like at this moment, I would not feel very comfortable in the car. I think it's perfectly safe, but it's just a bit like a roller coaster, I think, in there. But this whole time, clearly looking from outside the car, is very stable and safe. And it finishes the whole climb successfully. Good job. This is going to be one of the best advertisements for Tesla ever because a movie is being made about Elon Musk. An Elon Musk biopic is in development at A24 with Darren Aronofsky on board to direct. Walter Isaacson's authorized biography on Elon will serve as the basis for the screenplay. That's seriously great news, and I'm really looking forward to that movie. More and more Cybertrucks are being spotted. Yesterday, 10 Cybertrucks were spotted at Giga Texas by Brad Sloan. Is it just me, or maybe just the lighting or a new camera or something? But these seem to look a bit better to me. Do they look any better to you? Maybe it's also because we got pictures that show the backs of the Cybertrucks. And here's 10 more! This is from today. Now, it's raining here, I think, so that's why they look a bit different. But clearly, progress is being made. I don't think we will have a delay on the Cybertruck delivery event. I think it's happening and the Cybertrucks will be delivered that day. Joe spotted 14 Cybertrucks today and over 100 Cybertruck castings, so this is looking really good. Here's a new Model 3 customer review. The door closing is a real wow moment. Comes across even better in real life than in the videos. Otherwise, the cockpit is mega good and the new seats are also great. I currently still have a Model X refresh and I don't think there's really much difference. People are really happy with their new Model 3s. This is also great news for us Tesla stock investors because this story directly affected Elon Musk and therefore Tesla. SpaceX has successfully obtained a court order preventing the progression of a complaint filed by the US Justice Department. The complaint, initiated in August, accused SpaceX of violating the Immigration and Nationality Act with its hiring practices. The Justice Department claimed that the aerospace company discouraged individuals with asylum and refugee status from applying for jobs and even rejected their applications. The court order, granted by a federal judge in Texas on Wednesday, puts a halt to the case, with SpaceX arguing that the allegations were both factually and legally unsupportable. Through his legal team, Elon Musk contended that SpaceX faced restrictions on hiring foreign nationals due to information sharing constraints related to rocket technology. Obviously, SpaceX has done nothing wrong, and yet we saw politicians yelling at Elon Musk how he is taking advantage of people and committing crimes supposedly here. And then it was also really disturbing to watch people fall for this. It just shows how people don't do their own research. They just hear something. Oh, yeah. That sounds like something that I feel would support my narrative. So yeah, I'm all on board. So that's why when you hear something, when you see something, speak up or comment or post, share videos, stories that reveal the truth, because it is an ongoing fight. And if you're not willing to do that, but at least like this video, subscribe to the channel, help the channel so that it gets pushed out to more people. There are occasions where Elon plays the game, but this one is not one of these. This was just a dirty political attack, which maybe at first started as someone just trying to take advantage of a legal system, but then it turned into a political attack. And now SpaceX had filed a lawsuit in September claiming that the administrative case against them violated the US Constitution. The recent court order blocks the Justice Department's case until the resolution of SpaceX's constitutional challenge. Volkswagen has invented a new challenge for themselves. Right now, it is not going to be chips. It is going to be a lack of e-motors. And therefore, Volkswagen announced it's pausing EV production. The same guy that told us that GM led and it mattered now says he supports the UAW push to unionize Tesla. So the only thing that we really need to hope here is that He says that the UAW leader here is going to lead and that it will matter.
There was an analyst call just yesterday, this is HSBC, which really initiated coverage. They said that their price target was $146. I assume you probably looked at this and probably laughed given your very bullish views on Tesla. But what was so interesting about the report was that they really were trying to define the company as an EV automobile maker. Is that the way you think about this company?
I think about it as a technology company that's providing services to their own company and to others. They can't possibly be matched by anyone else. They have data, technology. They make cars cheaper than anyone else. When Ford makes one of these cars, an electric car, every car they make, they lose $36,000 on. $36,000 per car. Our company now makes about $8,000 or $9,000 in profit a car. They were making $15,000 in profit a car. But if they build a plant that costs $7 billion for 1 million cars, that plant was making $15 million a year, $15 billion a year on a $7 billion investment. $15 billion on a $7 billion investment. An ordinary industrial company would make 15% on capital, 20% the most. This guy's making his capital twice a year. Now he's making it once a year. He's making $8 billion in a $7 billion plant. So he's the lowest cost person. Everything about the business is trying to drive prices lower. Right now, they will be in the 1900s, early 1900s, the automobile companies were tremendous innovators. No longer is the case. In the 1950s, they decided they were going to go for profitability, and they outsourced all of their supply chain to their detriment. And all these companies went bankrupt. Hundreds of them went bankrupt. And now the way we're going is that their electric cars, they drive, I guess they have about 30 miles a day, 30 or 40 miles a day, and they have 3 million of them that are collecting data. 100 million miles a day they're getting for data, and then they're also getting compute that they're going to have more compute than anyone in the world in 18 months. So to train it.
Ron Barron is sticking with his Tesla investment, and he's trying to say that Elon Musk is the lowest cost person. I haven't really heard that expression exactly like that, but it is true.
Have you been surprised, and this is true of the other EV makers, a lot of EV makers have put up big goals in terms of sales, and then they've scaled those goals back, saying there's just not the customer demand. Do you think that is the responsibility or a function of the products that these other automakers are putting out? Or do you think that there actually isn't the demand for EVs writ large that maybe was anticipated or expected?
There's 1.5 billion cars that have to get replaced. They do about 80 million cars a year, and a small percentage of those, 10%, are electric right now. Ultimately, it's going to be all electric. But the reason there's not more demand is the cars that are out there are not very attractive by the dealers, by the car companies, and they're expensive, number two. And then in addition to that, the dealers who sell them, they don't want to sell them because there's nothing to service. The dealers make all their money on servicing. So dealers sell them, they're not selling them.
Which is another advantage that Tesla has. Tesla has no dealers. Tesla owns all of its service centers, basically. And Tesla makes more money when people have good experience with Tesla because they come back and they buy another car from Tesla. So there is a very clear incentive for Tesla to have a great service experience. And you can of course find some horror stories, but my personal experience with Tesla service has been nothing but great. We had to have our air filter replaced, and we just pushed a few buttons and then a person showed up. We didn't even have to go anywhere. That was so easy and so smooth, and we were so happy.
You talked about trying to bring prices down, and that's something that Elon Musk has talked a lot about. At the same time that he's going to try to bring prices down, you have the potential for Tesla to become a target of the UAW, which of course just made this new deal with the other big automakers at meaningfully higher prices in terms of what those employees are going to be getting. What do you think about that?
I think Tesla's employees are the highest paid workers in the world as far as the automobile companies go, because they own stock.
As a function of the stock.
And that stock option would not be present in all instances if it were a unionized company. When the unions were in control of Fremont, as soon as they had trouble, they ran from it. Tesla took over that plant in Fremont after the unions had left, after the company had gone bankrupt. Tesla employees, there's a good story that one of the executives of, and then I want to talk about other.
Yeah, no, of course.
One of the executives who devised the pay plan for the employees was telling me that he's a small Jewish guy like me, And he was walking through a plant, and a large black man walks over to him, shaved head, tattoos all over the place, and says, Ira, are you the man who devised the pay plan for us? And he said, yes. He said, I want you to know that I'm the first man in my family, the first person in my family to ever be able to afford a home. And thank you very much. And so the workers there make more than anyone else by far, and their health care, all the benefits are better. The unions have been trying to organize Tesla, Toyota, all the foreign companies for years. They failed repeatedly. Why? Because those companies are not, the union's not in business to keep the employees. Their unions have the power.
Before we move off Tesla, just for
by the way,
second,
the stock went down yesterday, not because of that report.
Okay, what do you think it is?
Because of Joe Biden, President Biden, who, by the way, I love what he's doing for Israel, but I don't like that much what he's doing in business. Some things I like. But he's the one who said unions should organize Tesla. That's what happened yesterday when the stock went down.
He does say a lot of things, though. Joe Biden also said yesterday while speaking to UAW members that 80% of EVs on the road today were made in America. Basically, almost every one of them by Tesla. He also added that unions are more popular today than in decades, but UAW membership is 70% down since 1970. Ouch.
When you think about China, how do you think about the growth there? Because that's a key piece to the Tesla story. Li Auto reported its earnings yesterday and had strong EV guidance. It's gaining market share. I'm just wondering how you think about the competition, but also the weakening Chinese consumer. And have you discounted that portion of the Tesla story at all, given the Chinese economic forecasts out there?
Tesla right now is doing about 1.8 million cars a year. When we started investing in the company 7 years ago, when we invested between 2014 and 2016, they were doing 41,000 cars a year. So 41,000 cars a year to 1.8 million, they're on their way to 20 million cars. China is about 1 million right now of their 2.8 million. But a large percentage of what they make in China is exported from China to Europe. And the more they build in Europe, of course, the more they're going to save on transportation costs and duties. The idea is that China invited Musk in, and invited him in because the Chinese car companies have done very poorly for a long time. And the promise was that he's going to help them become better car manufacturers, and he's not trying to take over the market in China, better car manufacturers and develop a local supply chain. And so he was the only one that's ever been invited into China that's been able to not have a partner, a local partner, to operate their business. So I'm convinced that they have good operations in China. The person who runs their Chinese business, the Tesla business in Austin, in fact, is probably in line to be an important person at Tesla overall. He's Chinese, and he was brought from China to Texas and runs the business there. He's going to be in charge of all the automobile business. So I think the relations they have with China are exceptionally good. Both people are getting something from it, and I think that business will continue to grow. But he's going to open plants all around the world for low-cost cars. And wait till you see what's going to happen when all of a sudden they start selling cars instead of for $40,000 a piece, for $25,000 a piece, which is going to happen in about a year and a half from their new model. The new model, they think, is going to do 5 million cars a year. 5 million cars a year for the Model 2. That's coming.
Our next guest has a $310 price target on Tesla. That is nearly 50% upside from here.
I think 6 to 9 months from now, the stock has a 3 in front of it. I think it's back to above 300 as ultimately, I believe this is more of an air pocket that we're seeing from a growth perspective. I think margins start to trough out. And going into next year, I think numbers conservative. And the sum of the parts, as Dan talked about, I think when you look at battery technology, FSD, autonomous, I could argue it's probably one of the best AI plays out there. To me, this is more of a table pounder opportunity rather than time to hide in the cave.
I'm certainly not running away. Yesterday, actually, I bought more Tesla stock. Today, it's already up a little bit. I just can't quite believe it when I look at Tesla stock and see that the stock is at $214 still. To me, it's a buying opportunity. It doesn't mean that we can drop a lot from here. Given Tesla's history, it's almost certain that at some point we will drop a lot, and that point could be here, or we could drop a lot from $300 or $400 later. There's no way I'm going to miss the next big run on Tesla stock, even if it means I am buying occasionally slightly at higher prices, which are still, in my personal opinion, really crazy good deals, I'm still buying more Tesla stock.
Can it grow? Can it gain market share? Can it achieve scale if China is weak?
I mean, I just got back from Asia. I was there for 2 weeks. I mean, in my opinion, the China story, the cuts they've done, that's the strategic poker move they needed to do. No doubt, demand softened, but I do believe we're starting to see some equilibrium where I look out into next year, you look at 2.3, 2.4 million units, 40, 50% of that needs to come from China. So to your point, no doubt, China is the hearts and lungs of the Tesla growth story. But it goes back to, look, the bears have hated this. If you go back 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and I get it, they view it as an auto company, as Danny talks about. I view it, and have always viewed it as a disruptive technology company, which is why I view the sell-off here and a lot of the hate as more the opportunity to own it, rather than the time that there's some sort of, fire in a crowd theater.
Yeah, yesterday Tesla stock being down made no sense to me. Just because some analysts released a note and started covering Tesla stock, the stock drops 6% in a single day. Didn't make much sense to me. Just people panicking and selling with no good reason. Yeah, and the analyst's tip rank profile, well, it looked horrible. But Dan's ranking is actually pretty high. He's number 152 out of all of Wall Street analysts right now. That's pretty good.
I think Elon Musk doesn't love the fact that interest rates have been going higher. He made a point of talking about it at length a couple of weeks ago. How important is the bond market to the Tesla bull story?
I mean, look, Musk called it out. And then again, it goes back to, that was a disaster conference call. We talked about that, just the way that was handled. Yeah, of course, it's very important because the price cuts, essentially nothing even happens to that relative to the consumer. And I think, as Nathan's talked about, ultimately, you need to see that come down. You need to see the China story stabilize. You have a lot of competitors come from all different angles. But if you look at Lucid and others, it's very hard to scale. And I think it just continues to come down. It is still Tesla's world, and everyone else is paying rent in electric vehicles.
So if you look at the gross margin part of the story, where do you think that's going? And what do you think is a right multiple, at least to think about? You say it's a disruptive company on many fronts, but the auto business alone. How do you think about that?
So I think from a gross margin perspective, I think it troughs out over the next quarter or two. I do believe 95% of the price cuts are in the rearview mirror. And I look from an auto, if you actually look at the EV business, I think the EV business is worth $250 to $270 per share. Then you start to look at the sum of the parts, the battery technology, FSD, and what I view as the supercharger now, with them essentially being de facto in the U.S., that's another $30 to $40 per share. That's our view as a disruptive tech company, not as an auto company.
In other words, there is so much room for Dan Ives to later increase his Tesla stock price targets as it becomes more and more apparent that Tesla is going to solve FSD. He's only assigning a few dollars to Tesla's FSD, really, which allows us to buy Tesla stock at cheaper prices because no one really cares about FSD yet. To which, really, I'm not opposed at all because I'm buying a lot more Tesla stock. And YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching this video, make sure to watch this one first. My name is Matt Postius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.